Okay, so my name's Nikki Keller. I'm the Digital Projects Manager for England Athletics. So one of the projects that I manage is the Roster Athletics platform, where we work with in partnership with Roster Athletics. The session tonight is going to be led by Mark Delgado, who's very kindly volunteered to join us on the session and share his experiences of using the Roster Athletics platform. I think Mark brings a really unique perspective as somebody within the sport with lots of experience of the different types of competitions that get run across track and field. It's great to have his insight into using the system and how his experience with that has happened. So yeah, I'll just hand over to, we've also got Christian from Roster Athletics on the call. So I'll just hand over to Christian to introduce himself as well, and then finally onto Mark for final introductions.
Hello everyone, and good evening. And just following up on your intro, Nikki, then happy to be here. Happy for all of you to spend the time on that. My name is Christian. I'm based in Denmark, representing Roster Athletics, and I can see also a lot of familiar faces that I've already been in dialogue with. So happy to see that. And for you that already know me, then I hope you can verify that it's always easy to reach out, and I hope for the rest of you we'll pick up dialogues as soon as possible. So as Nikki said, then I hope that this will be as interactive as possible, and I'm looking forward to spending an hour or so led in good hands by Mark.
So I'll just say hi quickly. I think I'm looking at a lot of very familiar faces on the screen. So I think you all probably know me, or most of you know me, but I'm a level 4 photo finish judge, national level photo finish judge. I've been officiating for 14, almost 15 years now. So I think it's my 15th season. So a lot of experience of officiating all around the country and internationally as well, luckily enough. I've been using Roster probably for the best part of 18 months, possibly a little bit longer. I got familiar with it with some test events that England Athletics were running through Nikki a couple of winters ago. And I've done more and more and more. One, because more and more meetings have got the platform or using the platform, so I'm interacting with it when I officiate, but also I am trying to introduce it into more and more places. I see a lot of benefit, which I hope I will get across in the call today, in more and more of you using it and adopting it and broadening its reach. So yeah, I've got a reasonable amount of experience, nowhere near as much as Christian. So if you ask me difficult questions, I'm definitely going to defer to him.
Okay, thanks.
Did you want to start with your relationship with Roster?
Yeah, I'll just give a very quick sort of summary of the England Athletics partnership with Roster Athletics and just how it's come about. So England Athletics have spent quite a lot of time looking at different competition management systems for the sport. We've got a vision to have one system for the sport that can be used at all different levels of competition in track and field, so right down from the grassroots to obviously our championships where we're using it successfully at the moment. We looked at a lot of different systems and tried to interact with a lot of people across the sport as well, from athletes to officials to competition organisers and coaches, to understand what they need from a system and kind of what the challenges they were facing. And we came across Roster Athletics. We had a long dialogue with them about the system that they were developing and how it was being used in other countries. Had a lot of success in other countries such as Denmark, the US, and then agreed to take on the partnership with Roster Athletics. So there's a few things really that really stand out. Firstly, in terms of Roster Athletics as a company and an organisation and how they work, they're very professional. The work that they do is to the highest standard in terms of the development work. I think from our perspective as a governing body, it's really important to us that companies that we work with offer a real good level of service and support to people within the sport. So if a lot of volunteers that are using the system to run competitions outside of your typical 9 to 5 hours, and I think the level of service that Roster provide to users of the system, often outside of the normal hours when competitions are running, which is when people need it most, We think we've been really impressed by that as an organisation in terms of that service that they give. And I know different people have raised kind of concerns around the international nature of roster athletics and what sort of level of support you would get on that basis. But I think from what we found and from feedback that we've had from people that are using the system already, they've been really impressed with that level of service. So that's a massive plus point for us, because we want to make sure that the system is meeting the user needs, but also that the users are being treated respectfully and they're getting that level of service that you deserve as volunteers who are giving up your time. The other thing I just wanted to mention is around the data processing standards and the attention to detail that they put on that side of the system, making sure that it is GDPR compliant, and in terms of payments and things like that, that they're meeting all of the compliance requirements, which again, from a governing body perspective, that's really important to us, that we're meeting those standards. So that's another kind of big plus point for us. And then just in terms of the overall partnership, so the partnership that we've got allows us to be able to offer the use of the system to any affiliated clubs, organisations, leagues, associations. You can all gain access for free, but then the online entry system works on a transactional basis in terms of a transaction of those entry fees being taken through the system, which we believe is a competitive rate as it stands. And I think the usability of the system and the amount of functionality that you get access to run the competitions really kind of outweighs that percentage fee. In terms of the partnership, we very much see this being a long-term partnership for England Athletics. As I've said, we've got this vision where the one system can be used across the sport. We're not thinking that is going to happen overnight in any way. We appreciate that's going to be a long and iterative process. The system doesn't do everything that it needs to do for everyone at this moment in time. We know that it probably never will do. There'll always be things that are changing and moving on, and people will want new features and things that it's just impossible to keep up. But from our perspective as an organisation, we signed an initial 3-year agreement with Roster Athletics that doesn't expire until next summer, but we've got very, very strong intentions of extending that agreement sooner rather than later, and making sure that we're renewing that for a longer term than the initial 3 if possible, because we do very much see this as a partnership that will continue for a very long time to come, hopefully. So yeah, that's just an overview of the partnership as a whole that I wanted to provide to kind of put people's minds at ease from that perspective in terms of that long-term partnership that we have.
Good. Maybe I could tag on to the end of that. And so that the strategic relationship between Roster and England Athletics is super important for them. Why is it important for us as officials? I think what I want to do is really explain why I think it's important for us as officials and competition organisers that strategic sort of initiative works really well, and with all of our support. I don't know about you. I'm used to turning up to meetings not really knowing how the meeting's going to run. Everybody does it differently. There's bits of paper flying around in some places. There's radio messages coming in others, and I spend, if I'm appointed chief photo finish for a meeting, I spend a few days before the meeting talking to other chief officials, the organisers, trying to figure out how we're going to work together. And then during the meeting, that always gets refined because there's always something that's overlooked or something else that doesn't work or whatever it is. And we end up spending a lot of our time actually on the admin, not on the officiating. In addition to that, competition organisers are struggling always continually to find volunteers to help them run competitions. It's a story I hear everywhere I go. The number of officials is going down, the number of volunteers is going down. It's a continuous struggle. So by standardizing on a single platform, not only gives us all a great deal more familiarity or predictability in what we're going to get into when we come into a meeting, so that we concentrate on what we should be concentrating on, which is the officiating, not the admin. And it also broadens the scope for volunteers to be used by competition organisers, because almost certainly, if the vision becomes anywhere near reality, volunteers that are found will have already worked in other competitions where the roster platform has been in use. So it won't be a completely alien environment that people are being brought into, which then requires, you know, additional hand-holding and training. So I think it just helps us all to know that we are running competitions in a standard way, and it will introduce, you know, standards in codes of practice and in working practices that I think will benefit us all as officials and competition organisers. I hope that makes sense to people. That's certainly how I see it, and that's why I'm, you know, very keen on this relationship, and having used Roster, I've seen the benefits of that in play at meetings already. So I'm going to spend most of the time sharing my screen and showing the platform, because you don't really want to see me or listen to me. You want to actually see it. What I will do is I will target this at those of you who haven't seen the platform before, but knowing that there are many of you on this call that have seen the platform before, I will try and introduce points that I think will be of interest to you, things that I've picked up along the way in using the platform, maybe some more advanced features or some tricks or tips or whatever you want to call it. But I would also welcome from you any questions as I move through the different areas from you on specifics that you've either got in your minds, things that you don't understand, areas that you think don't work particularly well, potentially, or any other questions you've got, because I think you've got an opportunity now to air them to, well, not just me, but Christian on the call and Nikki, who have a lot more experience than me, actually. And it would be great to hear your input and get a sense of where you're going, because I think by understanding your questions, we will better understand what you're thinking and how you're thinking about the platform moving forward. I hope that makes sense. So,
maybe sorry, Mike. Sorry to jump in, but
yeah.
I just wanted to add one more comment to that, because first of all, second your comment, Nikki, we also see this as a very long-term partnership. So we hope to stay around for many more years. But I also second to the fact that we don't pretend that the platform can do anything today. And if I know you right, Mark, you'll probably also point out some things that we cannot do at the moment. But that leaves, I think, to a very important point, and that is the feedback. And that is also for you as users to give us feedback. What do you actually need? How can we develop the platform? How can we improve it? How can we make every single process easier? We try to have a constant development, but we really highly appreciate any feedback that are coming in. So yeah, of course, now you have a chance for the next hour together with Mark, but it's also just an open invitation for whenever you are using or looking into the platform, anything that you think would be valuable, then we are 100% sure that will also add value to other users. To manage expectations, we cannot do it overnight, but we try to develop as fast as we can under the notions that testing before launching is very important, and of course also trying to look into prioritization. Okay, have that open discussion. What is most important to do? We have a very, very long roadmap ahead of us, but we still really appreciate new ideas coming in, and the best ideas, they come from the people that use the platform.
Yeah, well said. Okay, let's talk about organising competitions. So if any of you, and most of you have been involved in organising a competition, it's actually a very hard thing to do. You have to figure out what events you want to run. You have to figure out some kind of timetable. You have to start inviting officials and getting hold of officials and volunteers. You have to start getting entries in. You've got to start collecting fees potentially for those entries. You've got to respond to a ton of queries from athletes and parents and coaches. You've got to do all that kind of stuff before the day. You've then got to run it on the day. So you've got to manage people arriving, collecting bib numbers. You've got to then manage seeding of races or putting field cards together. You've then got to manage, obviously the running of the event, and then the results. How are you going to get results out? How do you communicate all this information quickly, succinctly, and to everyone's satisfaction? How do you also then send results to Power at 10 at the end of the meeting? I've spent hours trying to get results to Power of 10 in the past at the end of a meeting. It's not always the most straightforward thing, because results come in all sorts of different forms for different events. So it's really a very hard thing to do potentially. So these are all common challenges that we all have, and traditionally these have all been solved with spreadsheets, emails, bits of paper, radio messages, and a combination thereof. Impossible to keep track of, very hard to work as a team, collaboration is almost impossible. It's just painful and hugely error prone, of course. So Roster is a platform which, if you don't know already, is designed really to solve as many of those problems as it can. It's a very broad competition management platform for athletics, and it has various components and various modules, if you want to call them that. But you don't have to use them all. You can use some, but I think the real power is from the platform is gained by trying to embrace as much of it as you can. I know several sort of competition organisers who have started to use the platform, but in a very kind of, not, I'm going to use the word half-hearted, but in a very kind of softly kind of way, and haven't really seen the level of success that I think they can gain because they haven't really embraced it. So they've tried to mimic their manual processes on an electronic platform, and it doesn't really lend itself to that, and you shouldn't even try and do that, in my opinion. So the whole point of Roster is to try and change the way you think and the way you work to make things better across the board for you as an organizer, for officials who are trying to run the meeting, for athletes who are at the meeting, for coaches, parents who are watching the meeting. So it's something I think you need to. It's kind of a new mindset you need to embrace, I think, is the way I would put it. So what the platform consists of, several elements. So I'm going to take you through each of these. Hopefully, if the technology stands up. Firstly, an admin application or a website, an admin app for competition organizer. I will spend most of my time in that because it best shows the functionality on offer in the platform. So I'll show you that how you create a meeting, what kind of things you can configure, what kind of options there are, and that will spawn a whole bunch of conversation hopefully. Then there is a competition entry website for athletes or parents, and I'll show you how that looks. There's then two consumer mobile apps, one for you as organisers, or us as organisers, primarily for results entry, and I'll try and show you that. And then a consumer app for everybody, athletes, parents, coaches, but also, and I'm going to stress this a lot, officials. I think that's a fantastic app for officials, because what you get from that app is exactly what we need as officials, which is essentially who's in a field event, what are the lane draws for a track event, what are the results, all available in an app. So I think it's if I speak to Christian, I think he targets it very much at athletes and parents and coaches and spectators. I think it's a hugely valuable and beneficial tool for officials. Okay, right. And finally, the final chink or the final component or the final piece of the jigsaw is what Nikki alluded to, and I want to stress it again because it's so important, and that's support. The support levels from Roster are incredible when you think about the number of customers they must have around the world and the number of time zones they have to cover. I ping emails to them on probably too regular a basis for their liking from me, but I do ping them emails, and their responsiveness is fantastic. And I know that's not just me, because I speak to others who use the platform, and I know that they get the same level of service. So it is hugely important when you're taking on a new platform that is replacing something that is so important to you, your competitions that you run. It's hugely important to know that you've got the platform developers back, and you really do have their back, because they will help you and support you as best they can through the journey, either in answering questions that are transactional as you're trying to think about how you use the platform, or true support, how do I do this, or this doesn't seem to be working, or whatever it is that you've got running the meeting. They're a fantastic team, and they're super responsive. But it's not just the team. They have a wealth of online documentation which is kept up to date with all their new releases, and there's most of what you need is on there. I spend a lot of my time thinking about emailing Christian and then suddenly remembering, actually, maybe I should look it up first, and nearly all the time the information I need is in there. So use it. I'll show you it in my demo. I'll show you how to find it. I won't show you it all, but I'll show you where to find it and how to use it. But please delve into it, because there's a lot of really, really good information in there, and these guys really do keep it up to date. They spend a lot of time doing that. Right, let me share my screen. So you should be able to see, hopefully, the web page. So this is the admin Roster Athletics website. What I'm looking at here is the meetings that I have access to as a meeting organizer or somebody involved in the meeting. As you can see, there are a myriad of them. But let me start just by creating all the menus that we're going to be investigating are down the left-hand side of the screen. So you'll see those up here. There's all sorts of things in here that which I'm going to touch on later. But I'm going to start with just creating a meeting. Just let's start with a brand new meeting. I am in Birmingham today at the Alexander, so I will call it the Alexander. Call it that. It's an outdoor meeting. There's a whole bunch of different sort of basic standard properties here about, you know, the dates, the time, etc., type of competition, whether it's team competition, individual scoring. But let me come down a little bit. Oh, yeah, ask me where I am. The reason it's asking me this will become apparent in a minute. Obviously, I'm in the United Kingdom. And it gets my time zone right. Okay. Now, as I've already indicated, I'm in the UK. It's already now starting to offer me the right kind of level of age groups, because these age groups kind of are very much tailored to the country that I'm in. So as I look at the different profiles of age groups I can get, I've got a standard set, which is the familiar standard set here. If I look at the extended set, and I've been using these today, actually, you can see that, let me save that. You can see that I've got the school years groups, school age groups. I've got some youth age groups that are common in this country. So I can choose the age groups I'm interested in a very granular way. Now, the age groups are important because not only are these the age groups that define the events that you're going to offer, so you might want to offer an under 15s 75-meter hurdles for girls, for example, or under 17 women's 300 meters, 400 meters, whatever it is. But there are also ways that even in an open event where you might be running lots of athletes together into open graded races, where you might want to generate a set of results that is age specific or gender specific. So by entering the right kind of age groups here, and I'll show you this later, it enables you to get results that are specific to the age groups you're using. That's a really important point to mention. I get asked this question a lot. Birthday visibility. You know, there's a couple of times I've been said, you know, I've created a competition on roster, and it's got everybody's birthday up, and I don't really want to do it. I don't want to show the people's birthdays or the athletes' birthdays. There's an option right on the front page where you can decide as an organizer whether you want to show the full date of birth, unlikely, the year of birth, possibly, or none. And if you're dealing with kids competitions, schools competitions, often that's what you have to do. So that's right on the front page, very easy to use. I know plenty of people who don't know it even exists, so it's something very much to bear in mind. I'll come on to do some of the other things in a minute, but what I wanted to do next was just talk to you about this option. So we need to do a terminology sort of timeout at the moment. There's a couple of bits of terminology in here that are going to either contradict or be a little bit confusing or alien to most of you on this call. It's just the way it's been defined. So when we as a group talk about registration, we are talking about people arriving on the day and collecting their bib numbers. That is not what roster talk about when they talk about registration. When they talk about registration, they're talking about entries. So accepting entries to competitions. What they talk about when they talk about people coming in to collect their bib numbers at a meeting is they call that check-in. So when you see registration, it's talking about entries. When you see check-in, it's talking about registration. Okay, understand? Hopefully, but that's what it is. So registration, I'm going to enable. So basically, you can have a competition roster where all of the athletes are entered by yourselves as organisers. So you're not offering it for public entry. You're organising it yourself. So maybe school competitions might work this way. But I think I will show you a competition that is managed through registration being enabled, i.e. entries being allowed. Once I select registration enabled, I get some options down here, which I will start to show you because these are important in how you set up your meeting. So if I look at setup, I've got some meeting options here. Some basic things about currencies and so on, and VAT that you want to charge, which I will leave. there's a couple of documents that you can upload, or 3 documents that you can upload, which are really important that you do right at the front, which is the terms and conditions document, so a document that you want athletes to look at before they enter, your anti-doping declaration, which is mandatory in this country. You have to have an anti-doping declaration for a meeting, and any other meeting information. I'll show you what this looks like as we go through, but that's how you set those up from the get-go in this area. You also have an area where you define what fees you want to charge, what the defaults you want to charge. So £50 an event is the default. I wish. That's probably nearer 8, maybe in many cases. The meeting fee is a brand new feature. So within a couple of weeks ago or earlier, if you set up an event in roster, you wanted to charge, you could charge athletes different amounts for different events, but if you wanted to charge, basically allow them to enter one event for one price and they get the second event half price, you couldn't do it. Now you can, because they've introduced this fantastic feature called a meeting fee, which means that basically there's a fee that you have to pay to enter the meeting at all, and then there's a price per event. So for example, if I want to charge £8 per event for the first event, and then £4 for every subsequent event, I can do that now by introducing a meeting fee of £4 and an event price of £4. So my first event is essentially the meeting fee plus the 4, and our subsequent events are £4. So that gives a lot more flexibility in how we look at charging athletes for meetings, and I think that's going to be a very commonly and well used feature and function. Right, let's go back to the events themselves. So now I've defined my meeting, I can start to add some events. Let's look at this list. So again, understanding what I've just set up, I've set up a meeting, and I've got this meeting profile here, which I'll come to in a second. But the professional meeting profile has all the standard events. So it has all the standard sprints, standard distance races, standard jumps, standard throws, and some combined events down here. Now, often the meetings I do are not these standard events. They are extended with some junior hurdles, some junior sprints, some 600 meters for kids in distance race, etc. So by picking a broader meeting profile here, you get a much broader set of events, track and field, but mainly track, but track and field. So you can really choose the events you want to run within your meeting. I'm going to pick 100 meters for men. See, the events are segregated by male and female. And I'm going to pick 100 meters for female. Okay, so I've just added two 100-meter events, one male, one female into this. If I go down to my menu and I look at the next section, which is the schedule, it's essentially the timetable, I can see what it gives me by default. So it's added already to those 2 events for me. I hope the color comes across on the Zoom share, but this is a blue 100 meters and this is a pink 100 meters. So this is the 100 meters for men, this is the 100 meters for women that I've just added. It's defaulted to an age group to senior. I don't know if you noticed when you set up the meeting, you defined an age group, a default age group. So it's just define those events for that age group. If I wanted to change the age group, so maybe my 100 meters is going to be for under 20s men, I could simply change the age group. If I want to actually leave it as a multiple age group event, so in other words, it's more like an open where I can have multiple age groups enter the same event, I can do that. So there's lots of flexibility there. If I am running a competition with heats and finals, I can define the stage that I want to define my event at. So this would be, let's say, my 100-meter heat, so let's say at 10 o'clock, and I can then add a stage, the final, in other words, at maybe 12 o'clock. Okay. If you look at the heat again, you'll see that there's a setup here for advancement, for progression, and it's really easy to define the qualification rules. Now, I don't typically do this at this stage because I don't know how many heats there are going to be. I don't only know the number of heats there are going to be when the athletes actually arrive on the day. So I leave that blank. You can set it in advance. If you are seeding pre-competition, you're seeding before the day, you know the lane draws, you know the number of races. You can do this on the day. You can publish it so that everybody knows there are 6 heats and the progression rules from that. I tend to work in most meetings where the heats are defined on the day, so I leave that blank and I can find that at seeding time. but that's up to you. You can set it up there.
Can I ask a question on that?
Of course.
If you've got multiple age groups within that, will it seed all your under 15? So going to a final, will it move your under 15s into a final and seed them, or will it seed across the whole lot?
No, so that will see, as I have it at the moment, that will seed across the whole lot. If I wanted to run an under 15 competition and an under 20s competition, let's say, I would, let's say, pick under 15s for this one.
So you have to set them up separately on that bit.
You set them up separately there.
Yeah.
And then all I would simply do then is add an age group for the under 20s. And now I've got a separate, if you can see here, I've got an under 15 competition for men that runs as a set of heats going to final. I've now created myself an under 20 competition for men that I can also, if I wanted to run as heats and final, straight final, whatever it happens to be. So I can run a multi-age group competition and have them all mixed up in whatever way I want, either as a graded open, either one race or more, or progression, or if I'm going to run progression, typically it's going to be in single age groups, and that's how I would do it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. The other thing I want to show you very quickly is if we just jump back to the events. Let me save that. Really good at prompting it, by the way, because I always forget. So on most of the things you have to do in roster on this website, you have to hit the save button, and the save button here appears in the bottom right hand corner. It's really good at prompting you if you forget, and I forget a lot. You're going to see that prompt many times in this demonstration. Right, back to events. Let's pick 75-meter hurdles. And while I'm here, let's pick a. There you are. See, told you to remind me again. Let's pick a mixed long jump. So I've added 2 more things to my schedule. So now I've popped back to my schedule, and you can see they've now appeared quite happily. So on the hurdles, what I want to show you really quickly is if I pick the age group that actually runs under 13 hurdles in this country, because I've selected UK, it's giving me information about what my hurdle specs need to be. Before it was a mixed age group event, so it couldn't at the event level it couldn't really give me any hints or indication of that. But now I've indicated that's an under 13 event. It's now telling me hurdle heights, etc. So it's exactly the same for field implements, weights, etc. For shot, javelin, whatever, because it has those specs inside. So it gives you hints to how you are meant to run the event, which is very helpful for some less experienced organisers. So really good to have that on there. What I wanted to show you was the long jump. Was the fact that we at the last I did a series of opens at Portsmouth Road in Oxford, and we have a challenge whereby we struggle to find field officials, as most do, but we have plenty of athletes wanting to do long jump. So what we tended to do over recent series is to run 2 long jumps back to back, so one at 7 and one at 8, one at 6:30, one at 7:30. So I got asked a question the other day: how do we actually do that with roster? Because all I can see when I pick my long jump roster, all I can see is I can set up multiple pools, but I want to set up multiple times. I want to run different competitions at different times. How do I do it? So the way that's done, and it's not necessarily the most intuitive way, I would suggest, but it is through this change title. The title of the competition denotes its uniqueness, if you want to call it that. So here, for example, I could set up competition 1. Maybe that's the 1831. And then add a different title. What that's actually doing is adding a new, it's not actually a different title, it's a new competition. And I think there's a lot of people who don't understand this. So I can now give that one, I can run that long jump 1830 and this long jump at 1930. Does that make sense? So it's called change title, but it isn't change title. It's actually adding it's a different competition. So it's important that adds title. You understand what that means, and it enables you to do these things that otherwise you wouldn't be able to see.
Mark,
yeah.
Question for me: could you add 2 different age groups? So say you wanted your under 11, under 13 long jump to be at 6:30, and the 15s, under 17s at 7:30.
Yes,
possible.
And unless Christian corrects me, and he may well do, you can't create you can either create a single age group competition, or you can create a multiple age group competition, i.e. it's anybody. I don't think you can create a competition that has, let's say, under 13s and under 15s, or under 17s and under 20s. Can you, Christian?
No, I mean, yes and no. So by nature, when we talk about a multiple age group, that is basically all age groups included, thus also not being able to have a single age group combined with a multiple age group. But if you use the changed title, so basically as a different competition or a different event, then you can use the title as an explanatory field and then say, okay, you have one competition which is 2 or 3 or 4 age groups combined that are then listed in the title, and you have another event that is then a single age group.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, it is then up to you. There's, again, Christian, please correct me. There's nothing really stopping athletes entering, in inverted commas, the wrong competition at that point, though, is there? It's something that the competition organizer has to manage carefully.
Yeah, that's true. So any multiple age group event created also allows multiple age groups to enter that event.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I'll show you in a bit what it looks like from an organizer point of view when you start to get entries in, and I can show you a little bit if I remember. Please remind me at that point to show you how you might filter those out, or what you can do to deal with them. Okay. So if we jump back to our registration options now, you can see that now we've actually created some events. We've actually got some events filled in here, and you can see this is our summary. Here is where you define some basic parameters around the event, and these are I think are quite pretty important, which is why I'm going to highlight them. So the maximum number of athletes. So if you want to cap the number of athletes that you want entering for any events within your competition, here's where you do it. You can set the default in the meeting options, but here is where you actually set it per event. So I might want 64 for maximum, 6,400 meter runners for the under 15s, 64 for the under 20s, 54 for the junior, the female seniors. Hurdles, maybe only want one race. Long jump, 20 per competition, because I've got a set of field officials that can manage 20 within an hour. So that's where you do it. And then what happens then is, as people enter, first come, first serve. First number of athletes will enter. If you hit the maximum number that you've specified, then one of two things happens. Normally there's a registration option, and I don't want to get into too much detail here because we'll go down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but in most of the time the competition you set up, entries will automatically be approved, i.e. you don't want to see, as an organizer, every single entry come into you to approve. You want to be able to have the system just accept those entries and keep them coming in. That's how most competitions run. You can do it the other way if you want to, and if you want all of that admin, you can do it, but most of the time you're going to have them automatically accepted. In that mode, if the 65th 100 meter under 15 boy comes along and enters, they will go onto a waiting list built into roster. So they'll start to plug it into a waiting list, and you can run that waiting list for as long a time as you like and build up as many athletes as you want in that waiting list. You then have you can close the event. I'm going to come on to that in a minute, but you can close the event and that will stop the waiting list being added to. But having that waiting list is really, really handy, and I suggest that you don't just close an event as soon as you get to your 64 in this particular case, that you let that waiting list grow a little bit, because it's a great way of supplementing when people withdraw. So you get withdrawals that come in inevitably. Whether you want to give them refunds or not is completely up to you as an organizer, but you'll get withdrawals coming in before the day from the point of entry. And if you have a waiting list, which is again sorted by the order in which people entered or tried to enter, you can literally just slip them in. And it's really easy and it's very fair. You're not then suddenly allowing athletes to leapfrog the queue. You've got them in the order they came in. It's super fair, very transparent. Great communications come from roster when they enter a waiting list and come off a waiting list. And it's really useful. So I strongly suggest if you're organising a competition that does get a lot of entries, hopefully your competition gets lots of entries, that you let it run a reasonably sized waiting list so that you can use that in the future. The other thing on here, price per entry. qualification standard is also a very useful thing here, which is, you may want to run two competitions. Maybe the two pools of the long jump that I've got here. Maybe you want to have a jump season best or personal best sort of cut off between the early competition and the late competition. Maybe you want all the longer jumpers later in the day or first thing in the day, whatever it is. You can actually set qualification standards for one or more of these events, which can either be very strictly adhered to by the system or go to you to approve or reject any discrepancies within that. So that's really useful, especially if you're running a large competition. Very useful indeed. Finally, this state just shows where we are with registration. Pending the competition isn't published. This is a test one I've just created here in front of you, so it's clearly pending. Open is open for entries, closed is closed, and excluded is closed, i.e. nobody can enter that anymore. And we'll stop the waiting list growing, which is the point I made earlier. Excluded is for competitions that you may want to exclude from entry, so you may want to have those through a different entry system, or maybe there's a different qualification system. You want to include those as part of your competition, where most of the events are open to the public to enter, but there's some that you want to exclude. That's a great way of excluding those individual ones. Okay, let's move on. Let me show you a real competition. Next, I mentioned these. I work on these opens with a group, some of which are on this call actually. A series of opens we run once a month in Oxford, and they're reasonably simple because we run very few events, so they're actually good for demos because they're easy to understand. If I show you the schedule here very quickly, so we run some hurdles. There you are. There's the long jump, the two pools of the long jump I was talking about earlier. Competition 1, competition 2. Some 100 meters, a high jump, some 3s, some 4s, and some 8s. So pretty simple, pretty standard kind of open stuff. If you look at the registration setup for this, you can see that we've got the caps that I was talking about earlier, the prices, they're all open. We don't have any qualification standards, very simple. I mean, this is really easy to set up. That's a real competition. So what does that look like to the athletes when they want to enter this competition? I can show you that. So this is the meets competition, i.e. the entry competition that's open to the public. So they would come in here again. They'll need a login account on roster, which they can easily apply for. If I want to find that meeting that I'm just looking at, if I look again, I can filter them for the ones where I've got registration open. So there it is, the 5th of July meeting. There's a bit of information. Here's some information that I've put, the meeting organisers provided for the meeting. Here are the events. So that's the view that I just showed you from an admin point of view. That's the same view from the entries perspective, identical. So you can see the same events, whether the registration is open, the price, the maximum participants. I can also see under normal conditions, you've got a lot of flexibility of what you show and what you don't show as an organizer. But normally you can actually see who's already entered. So I've got a 75 hurdles here where I can see there are 3 entries for it, and I can see who I might be up against as an athlete, or I could search for somebody. If I want to see whether a particular compatriot of mine might be in a race, I can see that somebody's already in, somebody who's already entered, or I can look at a full list of competitors. Now, with seasons best and PB, so this is all useful information for an entering athlete. But I want to stress, you can hide or show this if you don't want to. If you don't want to show it, you're concerned about that, you can hide it. I think it's very useful. I think it actually develops a little bit of or helps with some camaraderie. If you know your rival's running, you want to maybe enter a little bit more keenly. But there may be concerns with certain events about showing a lot of this stuff. So it's all hideable. I just want to make sure that you understand that. So let's say I wanted to enter this event or this competition. Hit the registration button. I log in to my account, which I've got. And then it will show me the events that I am allowed to enter, being me as a male with the age group I am, and I'm not going to give you away what that is, but the age group I am. So I can only enter events that are specific to my status on my standing. And there they are. Now, I'm not going to enter this event because I would make a right old fool of myself, but I would simply tick, enter season's best, personal best, and hit register. I will explain what this is in a minute. This is a really powerful tool. And the best way and the most common way that athletes communicate with you as a competition organizer is through these messages. There's a messaging system built into this so that an athlete can send an organizer a message at any time. And I'll show you that from the other end, actually. I'll show you that from the organizer's perspective in a second. But that's as easy as it is. Obviously, if I hit register, I would now go on to payment and pay my entry fees, etc. But as I say, I'm not going to enter the 400 meters next month. That would be a really bad. Okay. Any questions on any of that before I move on?
Yeah, can I ask a question, please, Mark?
Sure.
Is there any facility for team managers or club managers to enter athletes? For example, we have a league where we have several clubs that participate and enter all their athletes. All their athletes turn up on the day. So I'm wanting to use roster next year for that. But for basically the club to go in and enter the athletes into those events.
So yes, you can enter, and I will show you this in a minute. You can enter athletes in manually. They don't, as I indicated earlier, you don't have to go through this entry system. Obviously, then if without going through this entry system, then you're not collecting payments through this entry system either. Yeah. So I don't know if that's whether that's positive or negative for your scenario. It sounds like it might be a positive. I don't know. Christian, I don't know if you got anything else to add on that.
Yeah. Correct me if I misunderstand the question, but I actually think there are more to it. So first of all, if we look at the entry system part of things, then the same athlete can be affiliated to multiple registration or entry accounts. So that also means that Mark can have his own account and enter any competition, but he could also be a coach, have a number of athletes on his account. So in that case, a team manager could basically have all his or her athletes under his or her account, enter that or those for any competition.
Okay, so that coach then has to set up all their athletes within their account. There's no link to be able to bring through from the England Athletics portal at all for that, is there?
No, and in full transparency, that is also by design, and that is for us to be in full compliance with the GDPR rules in terms of data protection. So we are not opening up the database. Yep. I'll give you the full insight. What is basically happening is that when I create a registrant account, or it looks to me as a user as I'm creating a new athlete. Once a new athlete is created to any account, on the backend side, we look into the database, we see if there's any matches, we merge all athletes up against each other. So in the backend side and in the database, it is the same athlete, but to be in compliance with GDPR, you need to create it the first time. Once an athlete is created, then it's always available on your account.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
Good question, though. Very good question. Right. I just want to show you what I was talking about a second ago about these registration messages. So I'm back in the admin website. So I'm the organizer again, organizer hat on now. Looking at that open that we were looking at on the other side. You'll notice the red exclamation mark here. Now that's indicating to me as an organizer that there's something that's needed for my attention. Either it's typically a refund request, a bib allocation duplication that I've given, or something untoward. But the other thing that appears in here are our registration messages, i.e. messages from entrants about what they're doing. So I mean, this is a real competition. You can have a look at them. There's nothing. I've been through these. There's nothing particularly private about any of these messages. They're very typical. So if I look at this particular athlete, this athlete is basically saying she might have a PB that changes at the weekend. She's running in a SAL. That's good to know. Not going to affect the way I treat her, I don't think, in this particular case, but that's good for her to tell me because it might be information that I can use when I'm seeding. Abigail here. So this is a common one. So an athlete has misentered, typed in incorrectly in an incorrect format their season's best or personal best, and they now want to come back and tell me that actually that was wrong, so they want me to change it, which is fair enough. This athlete's never run before. So you can see the kind of messages that come through. There's all sorts of things. There's all sorts of things I get through these kind of messages. But they're a great way of athletes keeping in touch with the organizer and providing that additional information. Now, if I want to go back to those athletes, I can either just do what they want. Like I'll change Abigail's season best in a minute, so you can see how that works. I can either do what they want, or I have information here that I've got her contact details, which I won't show you actually. I've got her contact details, so I can email her, phone her, respond to her in whatever way she's asked. So I can get an interactive flow going. But pretty much all conversations with athletes start with a registration message. Very useful and really important to keep an eye on, by the way. So if you see that as an organizer, if you're seeing that at the top of your competition, have a look at what it is. It's an athlete getting in contact with you for some reason, and it's important that we're responsive. I do see a lot of competitions that I go to with, you click on that and there are literally 10s or 20, 30, 40 messages there that haven't even been looked at. So it's really important that that's done in my opinion. So right, let's look at this. Let's look at this one. It's a very typical one. So I've got a PB that I need to change. Now the way I change that, or the area I change that, is an area we haven't looked at yet, which is in start lists. So the start list is basically the list of all the athletes that have entered an event. Their season's best, personal best. So there I can do the seeding and etc. But I've got the start list. Now, a quick trick for you, and it's not really a trick. It's just something that's obvious, but you may not have done it. If you're navigating between things in roster. So, for example, here I'm working through a list of registration messages, and those messages are going to lead me to look at other things in roster. They're going to lead me to a start list, or they're going to lead me to a bib allocation page, or whatever it is. So, I want to be able to navigate backwards and forwards from this page very quickly. Just create another tab. Yeah, don't spend your life re-navigating around roster. Just create another tab, duplicate the tab, and then from one tab you can see the registration message that Abigail wants 300 meters time of 44.14. In the other tab, you can actually go to the start list, find the 300 meters, find Abigail. I'm doing lots of things that I'm hoping you're absorbing in the way I'm searching. So I haven't got time to highlight them all to you, but there are lots of oh, there's an update been released. Christian, good timing, huh? So that appears quite a bit. You see the roster's continuous build process is running, and you often get updates coming through when you're working with the platform. Just hit load, just reloads. Never been an issue for me. Just reloads. You get a whole bunch. You get new features. You get bug fixes. Also, it's really important that you do that. So let's look at Abigail again. So there's Abigail, and she wants her PV changed to. I think I've already done it. But there you are. Her PV's changed to 40, and I could change it here. Then I would go back, mark the message as read, and as you can see, that makes it disappear from the list. And that's just a way of doing it. Those two tabs, or 2 or 3 tabs sometimes, but if I've got a complicated thing I'm doing, it's really helpful rather than having to navigate all the way through the different areas and then back to where you started from. Just keep lots of tabs open. You keep as many open as you like, looking at the same competition. Very helpful, I think. Right, let's look at bib allocation. So that's the next thing you really want to do. Look at. So I won't go into huge details here. It's fairly straightforward and obvious. You can allocate bib numbers to athletes, and you'll want to do that obviously before the competition. You can do it manually if you really want to. You can put 1, 2. You're more likely to allocate them automatically. So what you do is you decide how you want to allocate them, whether you want to allocate them by surname, by event, by competition, by club, and just basically sort this list into whatever you want to. Let's say you want to give all the numbers out by different clubs, or you give numbers out based on club, and then based on maybe last and first name, and you want your numbers to start at 301 because that's the pack you've got. You say allocate, and that just allocates them in that order to those athletes. Very straightforward. Hit save. I'll do that because I'll clear all these later. Hit save, and those numbers are now allocated. Very simple, very straightforward. You can come and change them at any time you like. So you see the little padlock against the number. You want to change that athlete's number. Either maybe the athlete's lost the number, or you've lost the number, or you allocated it incorrectly in the first place. Come along, change it anytime you want. Okay, bib allocation really easy. There's not a lot.
Sorry.
Go on. Yeah,
Does
go
it tell you if you've duplicated one? If you try and put in 303, will it let you do that or not?
It does.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, I now get a little bell at the top.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, good. So I think Chris can answer the question. I think the reason it doesn't do it as you're going through is because you might be manipulating bid numbers, and to get messages out all the time would be a pain in the neck. But it does tell you up here that you've got a duplicate bib that needs sorting out.
Thank you.
What you need to know. Okay. Right. Let's run the competition then. So what's the first thing that needs to happen when a competition is run is the athletes arrive and want to pick up these bib numbers you just allocated. Now this is I think one of the most important parts of the roster platform is the check-in piece, is that athlete arrival piece. It is incredibly easy to use, hugely powerful, and if you don't use, and I do go to roster competitions where they don't use this, and I sit there in the corner and I really cannot understand why they don't want to use it, because it makes life so much easier. So basically, what it is, it's a system whereby, you know, as athletes arrive and pick up their bib numbers, you tick them off. That's all you're doing, is you're ticking them off, and you're making sure that they still want to enter or compete in the events that they entered. So, you know, do they maybe don't want to enter into or compete into all of the events? Maybe it's only a subset of the events, and you're just quickly checking them off, and it's so fast. And I can tell you that several competitions I have with very, very, very long registration or check-in queues. The time is taken searching for the physical numbers, not the time taken in here. So this is super fast, super efficient, very easy to use. I've seen people who are non-computer literate pick this up very quickly. I've seen skeptics pick this up really quickly. I really would encourage you to use this if you haven't used it before. It adds so much power to the rest of the meeting, for reasons I'll go into in a minute. But it is, yeah, if you're going to adopt one thing new in roster that you haven't adopted before, adopt this, because it's really fantastic. So the way it works is an athlete arrives, or I'll do a quick demo. An athlete arrives, name. So you can either type in, you can start to type in anything as you see it, and as I'm typing, the results are already starting to filter. So you don't even need to type in the whole name typically. So if Richard Hart has arrived, so I can use his surname, I could use his first name. Obviously Richard might yield a few more, in this case actually yield fewer results. So you can type first surname, so anything you like, and the results will automatically filter. So Richard Hart, you would look at Richard Hart and say, right, 100 meters, yes, 100 meters, and literally all you do is you tick. Now hitting that tick means that the rest of the roster platform, and specifically your start lists, your seeding, your field cards, and everything else that's going to be generated from this, already have an awareness that he is here. Now that sounds really simple, but actually really important. When registration, you typically will have a registration or check-in close time, however close or far away from the event you decide to make it. You would then want to look at it per event. So you would then now want to look at maybe the whole of the 100 meters. You're about to close the 100 meters. Let's say that one there, you want to close 100 meters.
Put the 100 meters in the bib number rather than the
Oh, sorry. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So as you can see, only Richard's arrived, but let's say there's a few more arrived in the meantime. And registration is about to close. You need to, the practice should be in my opinion, and the thing I think works best is that the person in charge of registration, in charge of entries on that desk, comes in here and scratch all pending. Scratch all pending basically says anybody who's not here, they're not coming, they're not in, scratch them. And that simply puts a cross against each of those athletes. And again, now if I now want to then seed that event or generate a field card for that event, I've only got the athletes that are actually here that I can deal with. And that's obviously massively powerful, but it stops paper being moved around, it stops radio messages coming through, it stops in races because you're having to seed from the entries and not from actual people who are present. Massively powerful. Yeah, it's hugely powerful piece of functionality, that. Let's say the athlete was in multiple events. It's a guy called Luke. Yeah, this guy's in 2 events. he only wants to do the 100 meters, decided he doesn't actually want to do the high jump. Oh, you don't want to do the high jump? Okay, so I'll tick you off the 100 and cross you off to the high jump. Again, really, really, really simple stuff, but really helpful and really, really useful. So if we go to see what that looks like from the seeding perspective, if I go back to start list. So start list is now where I'm actually looking at the people who have entered and are actually here. And I look for, there's a whole bunch of filters in here that I would encourage you to look at. The one I often turn off is the breakdown, because as I mentioned earlier, when you have multiple age groups, you also see the multiple breakdowns in grey. I don't know if you can see that on the Zoom screen. So you can actually, even though you've got a mixed long jump with lots of different age groups in it and genders, you can actually see the different breakdowns, the under 13 boys here, the under 15 girls there, etc. If you want to do, it's not always what you want to see though, so you can lose those breakdowns very quickly and actually look at the events themselves. I find that quite useful. Look at those 100 meters again. And in this particular case, I've actually seeded those 100 meters, I think, into two. If I go to seeding, you can see that I've already seeded this into 2 races with 2 people in one and one person in another. Very exciting races, but that's what it is. This guy in black on the left-hand side has come in to registration after I've seeded. So often the case is you've seeded races, they're out there on the track, they're at the start line, and somebody turns up, either somebody turns up late or a coach has forgot to come into the registration, pick up his bib number, or whatever it is, and there's a call on the radio, so-and-so's come in, can you put him into a race? And your heart drops at that point. But here it's really easy because I can see very quickly what I've already seeded. I can see very quickly who else is here not seeded because they're in bold, and I can literally drag them into a race, just put them in. I don't have to reseed. I could reseed. I could change all my seeding options. I could reseed, but I'm not going to reseed. I just want to put them into a lane. I can then quickly tell the start team that put that person into lane 2, whatever I've done in race 2, and off we go. Very straightforward. The seeding options very quickly while I'm here, and I'm not going to give you a seeding tutorial because we haven't got time. But you can seed. You look at you typically if I clear all the heats here. Go back to 1. Right, so that's what I'm presenting with. I can say I've only got 4 athletes, so it's clearly going to be. It would normally be 1 race. If I wanted to run that as 2 races, I could. If I wanted to give them all a separate race, I could do that too. Create 4 races, and then I can seed automatically. I can seed it manually by just literally dragging and dropping like I did before, or I can seed based on their entry time. So season's best or personal best. These don't have a lot to go on, to be honest. I can seed to use timed as my method based on personal best, or I can randomize it, or I can do it by. If I want to do a bib number, if it's a competition, if it's a standard heats, semi-finals, final competition, I would use zigzag seeding. So I take the fastest athletes and spread them across the heat, etc. Zigzag seeding, if you know what that is. So anyway, all the seeding options you need are there. The lane assignment options are there as well. Again, in this kind of scenario, I would use random lane draws for these races. If it's an open, I would, if this is a semi-final or a final progressed from heats, I would use World Athletics half pairs. And those rules are just changing, so watch the space for that. All the seeding options are there that you need, basically is what I'm saying. But you can always adjust seeding after the events. Is the point I want to get across. If somebody arrives late, if somebody doesn't arrive, you need to reseed, or you don't want to reseed, you just want to shuffle things around or move somebody into a certain race, you can through here. All very easy to do. I haven't got time to touch on a lot on seeding, but does anybody have any questions on this area?
You've got your lanes there. Is there any way of changing that?
Yes, good question. So let's say this was a slightly meatier race. Let's put it into 1 race. Let's say we have a problem with lane 5. There's a hole in the middle of lane 5. We don't want to use lane 5, or we don't want to use the inside lanes. You can always choose that. You can choose that for all the heats, or you can choose it per heat. You have a lot of flexibility of what lane to use. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Really, again, really easy to do. Okay. So let's see how that looks like again in the app. Actually, let me seed that one. Let me seed it and save it. Just add a couple of athletes there and a couple of athletes there. Right, I'm going to see if I can. I've got two races. I'm going to see if I can share my mobile screen. So I want to start to show you the mobile functionality. Bear with me 2 seconds. Hopefully.
Maybe, Mark, you'll need to unshare your computer screen first.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I'm there, I think. Yep, good. I think you should be able to see my phone. So on my phone, I have, ignore everything else I've got on my phone. I've got two apps. There are two apps for roster, as I said right at the beginning. I've got the what they call the consumer app, the public app, which is the dark blue one, and the organisers app, which is the light blue one. Let's look at the dark blue one. Let me swipe my head away. You don't want to see my face again. Right, we find the meeting again that we've been looking at. So that's what the meeting looks like on my phone. The follow option at the top here, it just allows me to add it as a favorite essentially. So I will follow it so that I don't have to go and find it again. But this is the events that the competition I was looking at. And as you see, if I look at the 100 meters here, I've got two heats. The first heat with those two athletes, which is what we had in lane 3 and 4. The second heat with those two athletes in lanes 2 and 3, which is what we just mucked around with a minute ago. So you can see how easy it is to use from an athlete's perspective and how much information they get. And this happens, I want to stress this, as soon as I hit seed or save on that seed screen, this app has this information. So I'm not having to print information. I'm not having to stick it on a notice board. I'm not going to have to find a volunteer to go and do that for me and waste another 20 minutes doing it and a ton of paper in the process. It's instantaneous. So the power of this is it's exploited. And this is why I said at the beginning, I think this app is as much an app for officials as it is for athletes. I mean, it's a fantastic app for athletes and the public watching the event, but it's also a fantastic app for officials. Because obviously this information is used by a whole bunch of officials. Lane draws are used and needed by photo finish, they're needed by the track team, they're needed by the start team. We ran as a little bit of an experiment at our recent county championships, Oxfordshire and Buckinghamshire county champs in May. We ran as a bit of an experiment to see if we could use this technology to its fullest. And I was running seeding and results that day, and I had brought a printer with me, and I did not print one sheet of paper all weekend. That's honest truth, not one sheet of paper. The start team were fantastic. They used this app to look at lane draws dynamically. The track team were very happy to use this app to look at that dynamically. I'll come on to results later. The timekeepers used it for results, for getting their track results. It worked actually way better than I had hoped and thought. We had some really good on-side officials, which absolutely is the recommendation if you're going to try this. But the benefits were fantastic. Not only did we have less paper and less inefficiency, we were actually able to handle more situations than we ever could before. So late athletes coming in, or athletes where there might have been, we have a procedure as with those competitions. If you're in events both days, you have to re-register on the second day, even though you've got your bib number. Now, athletes don't tend to follow that rule all the time. So we had some scenarios, not many, but we had some scenarios where they had turned up on the start line on day 2 and they hadn't gone through registration, so they hadn't been seeded. So literally, I could reseed them or put those athletes into a race. The start team would have that information immediately, and I would not need to send paper around. I would not need to reseed, reissue, or anything. We were able to run that competition way more efficiently than before. I think not just me. I didn't just come away with that. I think a lot of officials were quite surprised about how well that actually worked. So it's something. Maybe it's your first roster competition. Maybe don't try going quite as extreme as that, but certainly use that as a target, because I think the benefits for the competition and the officials and the athletes are there to be seen. Okay, so that's what it looks like from the athletes' perspective, or from the app's perspective. Anything else on start lists or seeding or anything like that? I'm a bit conscious of time here. So let's look at results really quickly, and then we'll open it up for any questions that people have got. Let me see if I can
Mark, quick question. Where
Yeah.
did you get the management app from? Because I can only see the athlete app in the Play Store.
You get it from the Play Store or from the App Store.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Maybe I'm not searching hard enough. Right. Thanks, Oliver.
If you search for roster athletics, you'll find them both. I think that's true, right, Christian? It's roster athlete. You'll find them both. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll share a direct link in the chat.
Thank you.
All right. Right. Quickly to results then. Okay. Very quickly to results. So track results. There's an integration with Photo Finish with roster that works extremely well. Christian, it didn't used to. 18 months ago, we had loads of problems, but you put a fantastic release out about a year ago. I've not had a single problem since. So, you know, it is pretty solid, that integration. So basically, start lists come to Photo Finish, results immediately come from Photo Finish into roster completely seamlessly. Works really well. Takes out all of the paper, retyping, all of that stuff out of the equation. So yeah, so you understand it, that when a Photo Finish judge hits save on that race, the results immediately go out onto the roster platform and therefore onto the app for athletes to see, or other officials or whoever to see, as an unofficial result. Now that gives them really, really fast responsive stuff. I mean, by the time the athlete has crossed the line, gone to find their bag, picked up their phone, the result is already there. So which is great. And I know athletes do appreciate that, because I've spoken to a number of them and they think it's fantastic. But the result is not official until it's made official. There's a designation inside roster, and I might not have time to show you this, but it shows differently. It's called finishing the event, essentially, and it's marked as finished when we as officials deem it to be marked as finished. So it may be 2 seconds after the unofficial result comes out, it may be half an hour after the unofficial result comes out, but until it's made official, it's not official. And there's a definite difference to providing instant best as you can feedback to an athlete, to saying here is the official result. And you can do both, and should do both. Right, results really quickly. Let's look at do I have a high jump in here? I do. Let's look at high jump really quickly. Okay, so entering a high jump result. Typical event is running. Field card is filled in by the officials, field officials, goes to the field referee, gets signed, gets sent to the results team. That can take 20 minutes in itself, all of that process, because the field referee's out busy doing something else. It comes in paper, you know, there are delays all over the place. So, but it's still a reasonably common way that it happens. And here's the screen you'd use inside roster to enter those results. Tip I would say is, if you know what your height progression is going to be for a high jump, for example, before you start the event, before you even run the event, put that height progression in first. So let's say you know you're going to be starting at 1 meter and then going up in 10 centimeter blocks, and then maybe you'll go up to 145 and then go into 5 meters. Let's say you know you're going to do that before you start. If you do that ahead of the competition, when you print the field card, that's what will come out on the field card. Those progressions, those default progressions will come out on there, which again saves the officials some time, avoids confusion, gets everybody running the event the way you want it to. So this area, pay some attention to in your thinking about how you run the event in the first place. But you would simply come along here. So let's say this was the order in which the field card was run. She maybe did a first time clearance, and then did a first time clearance, and then had maybe 3 failures. This athlete had maybe, like, anyway, you get the gist. You get the sense of what I'm doing. Now, if you notice now, by entering this, because my results are sorted by rank, Angelo has moved up to the top of the leaderboard, and I find that a little bit confusing. As I'm entering results, they're moving up and down the page. It's sometimes a little bit disconcerting. Use this option up here if you're used to using this page. The default sort by is by place, i.e. by position. If you leave it sorted by lane order, i.e. the order on the field card in a field event, it stops the auto shuffling going on. You can shuffle them at the end, doesn't change the result in any way or the way that the result is worked out. Just stops the moving around on the screen, which I find a lot easier to deal with. So you can see how this works. Really, really quick, really, really easy to use. But you know, still at the end of the competition, can take some time to fill in and check, and there's a delay therefore, and it's, you know, probably in a queue with lots of other field cards you need to process. So my advice is to use the roster consumer app or the roster admin app. Let me quickly share my screen again on my phone if I can find Zoom. I will show you what that looks like really quickly. This will probably take a couple of seconds like we did last time. While my phone is thinking about it, anybody got any questions on this results bit that I'm showing very quickly here?
Just one thing. The ability, you know, we're talking about the ability to use, you're going to show them how to put information in on the app. One of the things that I know that I'm and a number of other people around the country are looking at is being able to take information directly from an EDM and put it into these results like this. And I suppose if we use as long as we use a Windows tablet, there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that, is there, Christian? If I can get it out of the EDM and put it in, which I can do simply, there's no reason why it shouldn't actually go straight into there, is there?
Maybe not. I'm not 100% sure I follow the process that you suggest.
Well, I've used in the past various systems, and I have a number of EDMs which I take around the country for, they're not mine, but other people's, and I can connect a cable from that. I can press the button to take the measurement. I can then press another button and it will store it, at which it actually goes down through a cable to a USB port and will go directly into any app or any piece of software that I happen to be running on that tablet at the time. So theoretically, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to do that with Roster if I've got a Windows tablet, is there? And the admin app on it.
To be honest, I have no idea.
Okay.
Because we haven't tested it.
No, that's fine. It might be something that I've got a couple of test events still hanging around. I might actually have a go myself. But I just wondered if anyone else had done it.
At least we haven't. I don't know if anybody else on the call has. At least I would be very curious to hear how that test works out.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, no problem. I'll try it and get back to you. Okay, thanks.
Right, can everybody see my phone? Hopefully you can. So this is the other way to enter field results, or the other way, the really cool way of entering field results. So I started to put some high jump results for some athletes in on the app, on the admin website, and I've just saved that so you can see where I got to. So this is the same event that we were looking at a second ago. So I can now look at a very similar kind of interface here. So for this particular athlete, she passed at that height, or she actually succeeded at that height. Next height, maybe she had 2 failures. Now, doing that in real time takes no time at all. Takes literally 2 seconds to do on a phone. You can follow the event very, very quickly, very easily. But the advantages are twofold. One, you get live scores on the web for people to look at through the app. Fantastically useful and powerful for athletes, parents watching. It's really difficult to follow a field event. Even with scoreboards, it's really hard to follow a field event where you are. So having that all on the app is fantastic. It also saves the results team a ton of time, because although this is I don't ever class this as the final formal result. This is the unofficial result. It's almost like the infield spotter result, if you want to call it that, because all the results team need to do then when they come back to the looking at the field card is look at the field card. Does it match the result that's already been entered? Yes, it does. Tick. You go and make it official. It makes it so much faster. So much faster. Again, at our counties, we tried to do as much of it. We didn't get 100% field event coverage. I have to say, I have to admit, we didn't have the organisation, I think, to do it. We were better organised. We probably could have done, but we didn't do it. We didn't have it, but we covered most of it. And so again, I was sat in seeding and results for a very busy county championships. I think you all probably realise how busy a county championships weekend is, especially with 2 counties that we had. And it was me in seeding with one other person, and I think most of the time we probably only need one person, because essentially all of the activity that we were doing, that we would normally do to make that work, was already happening automatically, either through publication of start lists, lane draws, field cards, results coming in from field that just needed simple checking. There was no printing, there was no publication in that sense. It was all happening automatically. It's fantastically powerful. But presentation, it's another one. Presentation had their eye on this all the time, and as soon as we made our results official, they were handing out medals. Again, no delay in paper, no waiting for a formal, okay on a radio that gets misheard or miscommunicated or miswritten down or whatever it is. All fantastic, because it's all in one place, all to be looked at. So we got a lot of power out of it. I don't think as a set of counties we're going to turn back from that. I think we've proved it to ourselves, and we're going to continue to do more and more with this. So I really urge you all to do the same, because I think this. Yeah. What
was the weather like when you were doing your county championships?
Good question. There's a really good point. It was nice weather. It wasn't particularly warm. It was pretty cold in May actually, but it wasn't raining, which I think is where you're coming from, isn't it?
I think I've got 2 issues with I would love to do this. I like technology, but 2 issues is connectivity and signal, mobile signal or Wi-Fi signal. Yep. People using their own laptops or their own devices whether it's questionable, and also how much data they need for those devices.
Let me answer the last question first, because that's the easy one for me to answer, because I've been monitoring quite closely. Very little. I can't quantify it in terms of megabytes or gigabytes, but you need a tiny. It's not like you need suddenly 20 gigs to run a meeting. It's a tiny amount.
Even for doing all the admin and stuff.
Yeah, it's a tiny amount. I was running on my phone, or because I have the Wi-Fi at Oxford is useless, totally useless, as is at most tracks, completely useless. Yeah. I used the phone, and I looked at it at the end of the day, and it hadn't even moved the needle on my data plan. So I admit I have a reasonably high data plan, because I'm one of those guys that does have a high data plan. But even if you didn't, it is not a hungry activity compared to all the other things your phones are doing already. It's not something that I don't think you should be concerned about. And you can test it by all means, but you won't see it using a lot of it.
Yeah.
The weather is definitely an issue. I don't know what it would be like to use tablets and phones in a monsoon. We didn't have a monsoon, so I couldn't tell you. Christian might have some better anecdotal evidence of that, but my feelings are that paper isn't particularly happy in a monsoon either.
No, but paper's less expensive than ruining an iPad or a phone.
True.
Put your iPad in your weather writer.
Yes, I was just going to say we've used that. I use weather writers and put an iPad in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to dunk your phone into the middle of the steeplechase water jump, but your phone is designed to withstand some rain. I mean, they're not completely super sensitive to weather. So, I use my phone in the rain. It's not the easiest of things to do, because you think it's not great. It's not a great experience. I admit that, but it's still probably better than using paper, I suggest.
And the officials you were working with are happy to use their own devices. And
so what we did, we had some devices that we gave out, but most were happy to use them on their phones. And what we did was we designated one person in each team. So there was one person in the start team, one person on the track team, one person on the timekeepers team. It wasn't like everybody.
Yeah.
It was just one person that had the access, and that could have the access for the whole of the team, and then just communicate within the team. Now, I don't know whether that's the right way to do it or not, or whether it's better that everybody has it all independently, but that's how we did it.
Yeah.
We didn't need that much kit.
Just allocate a teenager to each event.
Pick a youngster. And that's the other point about the field event, the field result entry. There's a recent thing that came out from UK about this, and about how officials' teams need to be rethought. I don't think that's an official's job to enter that stuff. I mean, we grab parents, young athletes, standers by who are just watching the event, would you like to come and give us a hand and enter the field results for us? It takes I mean, the kids love it because it's on a phone, so they love that. So it's not exactly something that takes up a lot of time or is difficult to do. And it saves so much. It improves the experience of the event so much. I think it's really worth doing. But I'm not sure it's an official's duty, to be honest. I mean,
Right,
we did have officials doing it. We did have, Card 2 doing it, or the person on scoreboard. We did have doing it sometimes. But I don't think it's necessarily an official's job. It doesn't have to be seen that way, I don't think.
Mark, I'll just add there that yesterday I was down at Chelmsford, over the weekend, and I was entering the roster all weekend in the field, and the only thing we had was an overheated iPad, so that's the only thing that I found. But yeah, from a user side of thing, I'm not an official, but I was there as assistant, and it was absolutely brilliant. So I fully endorse it, and we're going to look to do it at our Cambridge Championships in Hereford next year. So
I think you made, was it you that made my infield spotter role fairly redundant because you were feeding them back faster than I could radio them over?
Yeah, I mean, if you do have an infield spotter, give them the tablet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of our infield spotters at Chelmsford had a tablet and was struggling sometimes with connection and battery life on that.
So clearly, that you need connectivity, and that's absolutely right. If you are in a Wi-Fi dead zone with no 4G signal, you're stuffed. No question about it. But there are very few places in the UK, at least, that don't have some kind of signal.
Tried Cambridge.
Maybe not Wi-Fi, but some kind of signal. Okay, yeah, I'm not saying there aren't any. They're probably, in fact, I'm probably sat in one right now because I've had real problems getting connectivity here where I am in Birmingham. But in the main, I think that's becoming less of a problem. Hopefully.
Okay, interesting.
Any other? I know we're right up against time. I wanted to show you one more, or talk to you about one more thing, which is how you put L numbers and how you record L infringements and yellow cards in roster, because I get a lot of questions about this. So I'll take 30 seconds, I promise. So if we go to div allocations again, we find that guy who had 2 events whose name I can't remember. Luke, yeah. Right, Luke Thompson. So let's say the scenario is he's did 348. Let's say he gets well, a few scenarios. Let's say he gets a yellow card, full stop. He gets a yellow card for someone who's swearing at an official or something. The roster has no way, and Christian, jump in and correct me, of storing the yellow card per se. But what I started doing and recommend to others who ask me is you literally just change his bib number to say YC, just suffix it with YC. So now every time that bib number appears, and the bib number appears obviously on start lists, on results, on everything, he's tagged with a YC. So that YC now follows him through the whole competition, which is great because it's visible everywhere. Let's say that obviously 100 meters, he's not going to do a lane infringement. Let's say this was a 400. Use your imagination. 400 meters. He gets an L. Now the L, for those who don't know, the L follows him only through the 400 meters competition, not through the whole of everything. So it shouldn't affect his high jump. So here roster has a really neat way of allocating event-specific bib numbers. So you can use this for all sorts of different reasons that you might want to allocate different bib numbers for different events for athletes. But by clicking on his 100 meters, it asks me if I want to create one. Now I get 2 rows for this guy, and I can enter 3, 4, 8 L, assuming that was let's say 400 meters. And now only for the 400 meters does that L exist on start list and results, which is what the L should follow through. So that I think is about the best way I know of using roster with yellow cards and Ls, which I think, yeah, I get a lot of questions about that. So I thought I wanted to highlight it. Okay, I've done a lot of talking. I will stop. If anybody has any questions, please, I'd love to hear.
Yes, please, Mark. Hi, Brian Slaughter here. Yeah. What about leagues? We run a midweek league and it's across 8 teams. Does it sort of lend itself to that?
So I think there are some challenges with leagues and roster, and I Christian and I have spoken about this before, and there is some functionality that I think needs to be added to the platform. I think I know he shares this opinion, to make leagues easily usable on roster. And I don't think I'm going to put words in his mouth, but I'm now going to put words in his mouth. I don't think it's something they're concentrating on, but maybe Christian, you want to pick that up?
Yeah, so First of all, in full transparency, then we don't facilitate all aspects of the different leagues that are running. Again, in full transparency, at least I'm trying to wrap my head around all the different details in all the different leagues in terms of point scorings, having the A, B strings, how they can compete together, not together, how they can be divided, not divided. And that is not an excuse. That is just to say that we don't facilitate all of those different things as of today. Do we want to do it? Yes. If it was up to us, would we standardize it a little bit? Yeah. So to try to answer it shortly, then some of the challenges that I see that are not working on the platform. So again, just to be open on that, there are some of the things that the team manager is doing as a team manager based on his team that works completely different on our platform compared to at least some of the other softwares or pen and paper, that at least in terms of the information that we have received. Then there are these issues about A and B string athletes linked to how points are calculated or scored on each team. We do facilitate what we call a team competition. We do run multiple team scores that are already facilitated. Some of those will support 100% what you're doing in your leagues. Some will support 90%. Others will maybe be less or be completely off. Yeah, so first of all, I'm very happy to jump on any calls also for us to get even more understanding on the differentialities or differences between the different league structures, but also to dive into all nitty-gritty details on the team competition. So shortly said, we don't support every aspect of leagues. Nikki, maybe you can also comment. We do facilitate team competition and team scoring, which when it supports the team scoring that you use for team competition is really, really efficient, because again, everything runs automatically, points are calculated and updated in real time. It comes across on all different devices, etc., etc.
Yeah, no, great. That's fine for now. Yeah, we'll pick it up probably separately. Thank you. Yeah, we'll contact you.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good.
Christian, can I ask one of my age-old ones about disability athletes and being able to put classifications in, please?
Yeah, you can. So again, the short answer is that we don't support or we don't facilitate para. That being said, is that we don't support, again, all aspects of running a para competition in terms of classifications, RASA tables, etc., etc. We really want to do the full and the complete solution. We are talking not only to England Athletics, but multiple federations, but also international organizations, to hopefully get some support to actually running the full project. What we can see from people that are using the platform also for disabled athletes is that they use a combination of the title functionality within the schedule and actually also the beeps. So e.g., they can use the title under the schedule to have an explanatory text if there's any disabled athletes in a specific event that is a combination of able bodies and disabled bodies, and then they use the beep to have the individual classifications, so T36 or whatever for a specific athlete.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a question on pricing? When you're setting your pricing, is there a way of setting a price across multiple events so that you pay a fee for entry into 3 or 4 events or 3 or 4 competitions and you pay one fee, or does it have to be on an event by event basis?
Yeah, so as of today, you can set what we call this meeting fee that can then be triggered to the first event. You could, if it's because you want to have all your athletes to enter 3 events and that's it, then you could set the meeting fee at that fixed price and then have all the individual events as 0. So that means that the first event I enter, that will then trigger, let's say, £10, and any second, third event will still be £10.
Okay.
Right now, we do not have the functionality where you e.g. specify and say that we have 3 events as a bulk price of 10, and then after that, 4th, 5th, 6th are then different prices.
Sorry, I didn't explain myself on that. So if you have competition 1 on Saturday, competition 2 the following Saturday, and competition 3 the following Saturday, can you have a fee that will cover entry to all 3 Saturdays, or just the first one, the second one? Do you have to do them separately?
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah. Again, fast answer is no. Maybe the correct answer is more that if all athletes are entering the first competition in that series, then you could charge the full amount on the first entry and then have that go across.
Okay.
You could, I mean, I've done something similar on a very small scale manually. So I didn't get time to show it, but you can supplement start lists by adding athletes manually as an organizer. You just add them into the events. There's nothing to stop you doing that.
Yep.
So I've had a few scenarios where you know, athletes have entered one and they couldn't make it for whatever reason, and the organizer has allowed them just added them into the following event, the following week, for example, and they've just been added manually. So I don't know what the scale of numbers you're talking about, but that might be an option. Is just to keep, you know, just to organize it manually and do it that way.
Yeah.
You can do it really easily that way.
I was just looking at our league for next year, sort of the way we do the cross country, and the way I was looking at doing the athletics is you pay a fee to enter into the race to the competition on one day, and you pay a fee up front for entry into all of the competitions that are running across the league, or you pay on an individual basis for each day that you do. And obviously the price if you pay for the whole lot is lower than if you pay for each one on an individual basis. That's what sort of where I was going with it.
Right.
But yeah.
And again, we have that on the roadmap. We have heard more requests that also especially linked to road races, where you want to sign up for a series of races. If you do that early bird, then you get the full series at X, and then if you do it on an individual race level, okay, the sum up is then higher. So that is one of the things that are high prioritized linked to entries. Another one is also the ability to differentiate between clubs or counties. So basically saying that your own athletes, they can sign up free of charge.
Yeah.
Athletes from not your own club, they have to pay, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm. Good. And I just had one final question. Is it possible to export the results into Excel, CSV, whatever it may be? Having never used a package, sorry.
Very, very easy. Yeah, you can export start list results, entrance. You can do it. You can do everything like. Yeah, there's export features in all the different major areas of the roster platform.
Brilliant.
And typically it's offered in spreadsheet, ISC, CSV spreadsheet format, or PDF. There's often options for that.
Great. Thank you very much.
Just conscious of time, and a massive thank you to Mark for taking everyone through that. I learned quite a bit on that, Mark, as well, so thanks for the extra insight there. Need to share that with our team. But yeah, I thought that was really, really useful just for myself, from my perspective as well. So hopefully everyone's found that useful. Thank you for your questions and for joining the session. and it being slightly longer than maybe we'd planned, but I think that, yeah, the value of it was definitely worth the extra time. If anybody thinks of any follow-up questions or anything, then please feel free to send those over to me, and I can liaise with the relevant people for you. So my email address, you should have it on the Zoom invite, is nkellett@englandathletics.org. So please feel free to do that. We will edit the recording, and then I will also send that round to everybody that registered via the Zoom link. And we'll potentially also share a link to that on our website somewhere in the next sort of week to 10 days for those that couldn't join. So if you are speaking to other people that you think would find the session valuable, please feel free to share that. I'll leave everybody to go and enjoy the rest of your evenings. But yeah, just another massive thank you to Mark and also to Christian for joining from Roster Athletics. So thanks everyone for your time this evening.
Pleasure. Thanks for all the questions.